Seaview Estate is the best choice you have been waiting for. Our Sanyang Seaview Estate is approximately 15 minutes drive away from the busy hub of Brusubi roundabout and into the heart of nature, where you can have a peaceful and relaxed lifestyle with your family. You can buy a finished 4-bedroom story with 5-year flexible payment plan or a service plot with 2-year payment plan option. With over 300 homes, you will enjoy big tar roads with covered drainage, modern electrification with solar street lights, gated entrance with security post, and a breath-catching experience of our beautiful sea view and lake view. You can own a home today at our Sanyang Seaview Estate. Call us today on 446-4838 or 325-9220. Visit our website on ejinvestments.net. EJ Investments, first in property.
Hello and welcome to this special broadcast with me, Mustafa Kerr. Today I have with me in the studio some very special people. These are colleagues in the media. At the extreme right there is Mr. Demba Kande. He's a researcher at Media Academy for Journalists. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I get this right. But also a journalist. He has worked on Afro Barometer as well, research. He's here with us, and with him is Mr. Lamin Jahate. He's worked for Reuters newspaper. He's the program officer at the Gambia Press Union. Still freelances for Reuters, and also a very keen blogger. Aissatou Keita is a journalist, a student, but also a practicing journalist at the GRTS. And myself, I'm a journalist too, but I'm here moderating this session. And we will be talking about the importance of media in a democracy, but also the Press Freedom Index. How was it a journalist as well to work under the former President Ajambe? So we will begin the discussion with first the challenges journalists has faced before this change of government we've had when President Adama Barrow came into power. So we will begin with Mr. Demba Kande. Mr. Kande, could you, in summary, I mean, you were here when Jammeh was here, I mean, even though you were at some point around away. So tell us, how was it like to be a journalist in the Gambia?
I think that's a difficult question, but also an easy one. Difficult in the sense that it triggers a lot of emotions when you talk about journalism under Jammeh. We've had a lot of cases, which is now public knowledge as far as the media is concerned. Under Jammeh, we experienced one of the worst brutalities of the Jammeh administration, from the killing of Deda Haider to Omar Barrow and all the other cases of atrocities against the media and journalists in particular. We all are living witnesses to how difficult it was to work under Jammeh. So because of those atrocities, it sort of sends a sense of chilling effect on all journalists. So there is this huge sense of self-censorship among journalists. So sometimes you want to publish something, you want to go ahead and interview people, you want to go and post some stories, but you think again before you do that, because what would be the consequences? What is going to happen to me after I publish this story? What is not going to happen to my friends, my colleagues, my family, and so on and so forth. So it wasn't, so to speak, we cannot even think of saying it was an environment for media freedom under Jammeh. It was a very, very difficult environment under Jammeh.
How does that, in your opinion? I mean, you were on the front line. You've worked for Point. You've worked for several other news publications. Before Point, even before Reuters, you've also worked for different publications. How does that censorship or that fear affect content development, if you like?
Okay. Before I go to the professional challenge, allow me to digress a bit to the social challenge. That is, most of the challenge during the Jammeh days, or part of the challenge during the Jammeh days, were not challenges of the profession. I mean strict newsroom challenges. Some of them were social. For example, part of the challenges I faced when I was even starting my journalism career was from the family. They were like, no, because I joined the media about a few years after the killing of Deda Haider, few years after the disappearance of Chief Mane. So my family and my friends were like, but no, this is a risky profession. When you join, you see people are being killed, people are exiled, people are beaten. So that's not the profession you want to choose for yourself. But I know that's where my passion is. I decided to embark myself into the journalism profession. But when I joined also, you realize that the challenges continue. like Demba alluded to earlier on, part of the challenges also was the fact that even to get people to talk to was very difficult. So journalists were not only confronted with challenges in the newsroom, but even outside of the newsroom, when you want to go interview people, it was a problem because they were afraid. When I give you the information, what is going to happen to me, the person giving the information, but also what is going to happen to the person who is going to disseminate the information. So because of that, journalists also were censoring themselves seriously. Even at some point when you have accurate information, factual information, but even you know this is an information that the state may not like. This is an information that may not go down well with the government. You tend to censor yourself, even though you know it's an authentic information, but you will censor yourself.
So in other words, content issues.
It seriously affected content in that area because information was coming out, you know it's true, but I cannot give it out. You realize my hands were tied, as one of our senior publishers will say, our hands were tied, or our hands were tied at our back. You cannot give out the information. It's there, but you cannot give it out.
So, if in an instance, you are a journalism trainer, there are times when they would say that no life is worth a story. Yeah. In that kind of a circumstances, you are a journalist. On one hand, you've made a commitment to speak the truth, nothing but the truth. And on the other hand, you have the truth, but you hesitated to put it out for personal cost to your life or to your resources.
Yeah. And we saw that a lot of that on the JAME, to be honest. A lot of examples of that. I mean, yourself, you've worked on the JAME, and I'm sure even if you at some point are willing to publish a story, but you will not find the medium to publish it because of the fear of the consequences of publishing such a story. Yes, and absolutely, no story is worth anybody's life. That's for sure. At the same time, the journalist's public responsibility, in this case, in the Gambian Constitution, Section 207, put the responsibility on the media to hold public officials to account. So that's the constitutional responsibility on the media. So, but in dispensing that constitutional responsibility, it doesn't really require you to, give the ultimate sacrifice. But we've seen in the Gambia that some journalists did just that. The likes of the Hyder, the likes of the Chief Mane, and the case of Barrow, journalist Mal Barrow. These are all examples of people who are targeted specifically because they are journalists.
You would think, as a trainer, at some point, I'll come to Jahate, but also to Kerr about how it feels to be working at a state news organization. But do you think that fear that's created around both the news content development, but also news dissemination, also sort of affect the media content such that it was almost like a bunch of praise singing?
So this in terms of the way it affects the media in terms of content, Lamin alluded to earlier, is the fact that first there is the volume, right? The amount of content that you generate from the media or from journalists. That volume is, seriously affected in terms of how many stories we publish in a day or in a week or in a month or in a year. Beyond that is also how much quality of the content that we actually publish, right? And how much critical, right? So quality, critical content, as well as diversity of views in the news content. I mentioned the fact that sometimes it was even difficult to get people to talk to us as journalists. And obviously, we as journalists, we don't, publish our own opinions in the news sections of newspapers or newsrooms or news bulletins. We publish the views of the general public or experts, and so you need people to talk to. So it was seriously difficult to find people to speak their minds and share their views on various issues that were happening within the country. So to that extent, it affected the quality of the content, the amount and the quality of content, as well as the volume in which...
and perhaps, Jahate, we've seen quite a number of, you are a blogger, we've seen quite a number of online publications forwarding all over. Perhaps this was what gave rise to all that under JAME.
Yes, like I keep telling people, one thing that is and that will always remain is that information will always circulate. When you sort of block it from this side, the rest assured that it will go on the other side. So what JAME successfully did was to censor the local media, and that's the media that was based locally in the Gambia. So and eventually a lot of journalists were sent into exile, professional journalists, trained journalists. And when these people went into exile, they realized that they still need to continue their trade, but they cannot continue their trade through the mainstream media in the country. They realized that, and this happened at a time when internet was also coming out and it was widely accessible in the country. So they went out of the Gambia, began to do some blogging, some went even professional news media outlets, they opened it there. And also some also realized that, look, even if I am on the ground, I have certain news on the ground that my local media cannot publish. So I will now have to give it out to the online media. For example, some of us were on the ground and we used to come into contact with certain information that we know our local media house were not going to publish. So eventually we began to give information to the online media. We eventually began to give information to, publish information on our blogs. Eventually that gave rise to the Freedom, for example. That gave rise to Guyanapo, for example, Mafanta. This is how all these media outlets came online.
The Gambia Echo.
The Gambia Echo, because the platform was not available offline for people to express their opinion. And mind you, the opinions must be expressed. So people decided to resort to online to express their opinion.
Farmana, you were very close. I said you were very close to the heat, as it were. I mean, that's just a way of. I mean, you worked at GRTS, and I imagine sometimes you had covered events where Jambe himself is, or where he has made attacks. How was it like? I mean, working at GRTS.
It wasn't that easy actually, but then again, the moment that you go in GRTS, I was used to this norm that whenever it is something negative or something that should not be published about the government, you should not just go there. So it became a part of me and part of other people that are in there. So even when you go out to cover events of JAME and so on, you pick points on key issues that you are going to highlight in your news report, mainly things that are positive of the government, because you dare not go to the negative side, and which becomes a problem for you. Actually, you might not be directly affected, but then the heads that are in question, like the DG or the editor-in-chief, are the ones that are going to be affected. Because we've seen quite a number of times that we've seen how one of our former editor-in-chief, Adi Fatou, was sent out just because of that, because a press release was sent in the institution.
Fired, you mean?
Yes, yes, he was fired. He had to take the blame upon himself. And a presenter was reading the press release, and come to see what happens. Suddenly a call was received and said that the person that was there should go. So him being the editor-in-chief, and then the presenter was there. The presenter did nothing, and he didn't do anything, but he just had to take the blame and said he did it, and had to take the exit door just because of things that happen. So many times when things come to the office, we have to go through it critically and see what favors the government, we bring it, and what doesn't favor him, we just have to let it go.
Interesting. But then again, I mean, all of you who had also gone to GRTS has had some professional training, and obviously you had an understanding of what your job is and stuff. How do you reconcile the two? On one hand, you have a responsibility to tell the public the truth, and on another hand, you have a boogeyman behind you. That was
the most difficult part, because then again, when you go outside, the way people look at you, you are from GRTS, and it is the only television station then. You are the ones that are supposed to inform the public, show us what we need to know. But we are not doing that. We were not doing that as a state media also. So sometimes I feel bad the way, even when people don't say, the way they look at you, you know exactly what their eyes, what they mean about what they say. And then again, as Jahate just said here, when you go out to interview, sometimes the problem is not even within the newsroom. When you go out as a GRTS reporter and you want to seek for people's consent, that is just going to be like hell. You have to go helter-skelter just to get people to say. Sometimes you just go out for vox pop. You might end up having only one person to get to speak to you, and it is always sometimes very difficult to have a balanced report at the end of the day. You just have a one-sided report, which again sometimes doesn't tell well to us as a reporter. How do you feel at the end of the day, and how will people look at you when you go out there?
Interesting, but one thing you've not that I think I want to bring your attention to it. It's the risk part of it. For instance, you have some guy there who have an idea of what you should tell. But yourself, you could tell something that he does not want you to tell. You don't even know what is in his head. But yet he is the one who has an idea what you should tell. I say the president.
Yes.
And if you've given an example of how someone was fired because of, the same way someone could have been picked up because of a similar thing. You live with that fear, don't you?
Yes. That is, but actually every day you keep on putting this in your mind. If I go to this program and I bring this, what will happen to me at the end of the day? This is something that has lived in not only me, but others that have been in the profession. Looking at what is attached in the profession, what we are supposed to do as journalists, the ethics part of it and all of it. And you come to see that you're not even doing what is expected of you as a journalist. You're putting two things into consideration, your ethical aspect of it and the risk of being sent to jail on so that trauma has been within us, but who are we to say that was the only option we had? We just have to live within that.
So, I mean, wasn't there cases, I mean, you've worked also at the GP, you've been there for some time, you've worked even before the executive and now you are the secretariat. Were there cases of people being victimized at the state television because of some perceived opposition reports they may have aired or...
I think one classical example that just comes to mind is the issue of Amadou Sane. Is it Amadou Sane?
Dudu
Sane. Thank you so much. Dudu Sane. I think he was a cameraman at the GRS. From the information we got, he was assigned to cover a UDP rally then. And I think the turnout at that rally was so massive that, and as a camera, there is no way, there is no two way to this thing. You just
to cheat the camera.
Exactly, you could not.
Well, you could have filmed the empty chairs before the program starts.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but the guy trying to be as professional as he was, decided to take the crowd as they were. And I understand when the footage was brought back to the office, then it was the late Modu Sane who was the DG. We understood that I think the DG and the management then were not happy. So they did not only suppress the tape, but I think eventually the guy found himself into a problem. Eventually he was taken to the NIA. We understood he was seriously beaten. He had to, after when he was released, he had to undergo some medical treatment. The family could not afford it. He was taken to Dakar, and a host of other things happen. And that's just a classical example. Most of the time also what used to happen is people used to suffer under silence. A lot of the people at the GRS, then to be fair, they also look at it. It got to a state that they also look at the GPU as an opposition entity. So they try as much as possible to distance themselves from the GPU. I'm not saying this to blame anyone because we all know the situation at the time. Because even you get close to the GPU, you might be seen as a threat or an opposition to the government. So they tried as much as possible to distance themselves. So even if they were suffering at the time, they hardly come out to the GPU to express their concerns. The case of Amadou was so obvious because, I mean, it was out for everyone to see. He was taken to the NIA, brutally tortured, brutally beaten. He had to undergo medical treatment. The family could not afford it. At some point,
didn't Bakari also...
the case of Bakari Fatou. And even the case of Mamoudou Sabali. These are public known cases, but these are not cases that they directly reported to the GPU. Yeah. But eventually the GPU got aware because, I mean, they were right there in the public.
But they all happened because somehow, the boss...
Somebody was not happy with the job they were doing.
The boss was not happy.
That's the bottom line. Not because they were not professional, but just because somebody sitting down there was not happy with what you are doing.
Interesting. So we could maybe fast forward and perhaps talk about, I mean, eventually Jambe gave us an excuse. The billion-year presidency had come to an end, December 2016. So fast forward, we have Barrow, President Adama Barrow. So I mean, first, how did it happen? I mean, first perhaps at DRTS, I know there are perhaps some few developments.
Yeah, certainly, because right now you feel free to report on anything. Maybe just when President Barrow took over, it was a little bit difficult because then that was the time that we had problems in the newsroom. Because during those times, it is not everything. Because people in GRTS were already used to what used to happen during Jammeh's era. So even that time, whatever you bring forth for news editing or anything, the editors have to go through it thoroughly, both the script and the footage and everything, to see whether everything is in the right part, right content. But when it went to a certain period, we all told them that now that what we feared of has gone, we cannot live in that era of being censored all the time. It's better for you not to do your job, because that is what not people were fighting for. So that being the case, now we are all free to
now have Good Morning Gambia.
Yes.
But even Good Morning Gambia, is it Good Evening Gambia?
Gambia Today.
Gambia Today, yeah. Even at that, but I imagine still you may deal with some degree of censor. But we'll move on to
yes.
Jahate. I mean, you are the GPU. I think if there is a barometer for the media, it's there, the GPU, that measures everything, every twist and turn, the freedom, the attacks, the this, the that. I mean, how do you look at the transition? I mean, we've left an old school dictatorship era into a new Gambia, quote unquote.
So generally, to the credit of everyone, not just the government, is that the media landscape in the Gambia has improved tremendously. During the end of the reign of Jammeh, we've seen that, like, we initially discussed the online media. For you to even access the online media in the Gambia, you have to use the VPN.
Yes.
That's
because they were blocked.
Because they were blocked. That is no more the case. You don't need any VPN to be able to access any online media. But not only that, the number of online media then we were very restricted. But now we have seen a blossom in the number of online media establishments. Kerr is one of them. Kerr was no more. There was no Kerr during the days of Jammeh.
Absolutely.
So we have a lot of them. And initially, even the online media in the Gambia, you can hardly see anyone to say, Lamin Jahade, I'm the reporter for Freedom, for example. I am Lamin Jahade, I'm the reporter for Gambia Echo. There was no identifiable reporter for most of this online media on the ground. But now we have seen not only people coming to report for them, but also opening bureaus in the Gambia. This was unthinkable during the days of Jammeh. But even beyond that, when it comes to the mainstream media, we've seen within these 2 or 3 years, the 3 other print media establishments were registered. When it comes to the broadcast media, television, for example, we only used to have the national broadcaster, GRS. Now, within 2 years, 4 private television licenses are issued. 3 of them are already online. 2 of them are already on the air. 1 is gradually coming online. Like I said, the online media also has tremendously improved. But beyond that, for the first time in the history of the Gambia Press Union, and maybe in the history of the Gambia government, you have a committee that is co-chaired by the Gambia Press Union and the Gambia government. Immediately after the transition in 2017, the Gambia Press Union and the Ministry of Information set up a committee, a technical committee of 12 people, and this committee was chaired by the Gambia Press Union and the Gambia government. The mandate of the committee was to look at, because the government came into power with the promises of reform, wanting to reform everything, including the media sector. So the mandate of this committee that was co-chaired by the Gambia Press Union and the Ministry of Information was to look at what needs to be done. Because the government told us that they don't want to do a firefighting approach. They want to holistically reform the media sector. And for that to happen, it is not only the mandate of the government to do that. The private media, the Gambia Press Union, also has a lot of stake in this thing. So the committee was going to look at, for example, in the area of media law reform, what is it that needs to be reformed? In the area of capacity building, we all know the Gambian media also grapples with capacity. In terms of capacity, what needs to be reformed? But also in terms of institutional strengthening and institutional reform, what needs to be reformed? And this committee, like I said, was co-chaired by the Gambia Press Union and the Ministry of Information. But beyond that, for the first time, we've also seen the Gambia Press Union doing a holistic survey, a comprehensive survey of the impact of the media laws we have in the Gambia. This survey was done, subsequently submitted to the Ministry of Information, and also subsequently submitted to the Ministry of Justice. And of recent, we also submitted it to the Constitutional Review Commission. The objective of this work is to make sure that the constitution that is currently being drafted have some progressive clauses on press freedom, freedom of expression, and access to information. Because we don't just want to stop at telling the government what to do, but we want to help them in the process. Because usually all that we wanted is the government to do things, but sometimes we also have to be fair. The capacity is not all the time available. The resources are not all the time available. And the GPU works with some international partners who have both the expertise and the resources. So sometimes we tap into their expertise, we tap into their resources. So we also help the government in this process, and we've been doing that. All this is possible, like I said, it's because of the conducive environment that the government has created. But it's also because of the conducive environment we all fought for. Because this is what we all fought for. It is not as if the government is giving this thing to us on a silver plate. We fought for it, we have it, and we are utilizing it.
Interesting. I mean, you've talked about a number of things about that, but I think there was this submission also by the Gambia President to the Constitutional Review Commission.
Yes.
Indicating some of the reforms the media wants to see. There is someone here who sits on the Media Reform Committee of the CRC, isn't there? Isn't that
technical committee?
The technical committee
of the CRC on media, public education.
Yeah, but you've also done quite a few research in the
media.
Yeah, in the media and on the media,
yeah.
And also you are an instructor and a journalist.
Yeah.
So tell us, I mean, from your own point of view.
I think I agree with most, if not all, of what Lamin said. I just wanted to point out the fact that also there are still problems. I think he will agree with me that most of the laws that existed on the JAMA are still in place, except for a few that were declared by the Supreme Court in May or April 2018. I'm not sure, but it's 2018. One of those laws is the ICA Amendment Act, Information and Communication Amendment Act 2013, specifically dealing with internet freedom and so on. Similarly, the Supreme Court also declared defamation as civil, no longer criminal, so, which is important. In an interesting case also, the Supreme Court redefined sedition. It used to include the government of the Gambia, but it has been narrowed down to only the
president,
the passing of the president, sorry, not passing of the president and the administration of justice. Those two cases where sedition can be applied. Those are good moves, but at the same time, I think we still have a long way to go. There are a lot of bad laws. I can name of the cover. I can name the Newspaper Amendment Act 2004.
Still in place.
Still in place. I can name the Information and Communication Act 2009, still in place. I can name the Criminal Code Amendment Act 2007. I can also name several other laws that really hamper the work of journalists on a daily basis. And these laws are in place. Nothing has happened, and I admire the fact that Lamin is very optimistic on the fact that there is, a framework. Media Reform Committee, co-chaired by the Gambia President and the government of the Gambia through the Ministry of Information. This is good, but we must tell them that time is running. It's more than 2 years since these committees were set up.
You think probably as politics grows bigger, politicians become fatigued.
Exactly. And so there's really urgent need for us to liberalize the media in terms of the regulatory system in the Gambia. Yeah.
So I mean. Let's look at, of course, there were reforms. There are reforms that are ongoing. There are reforms that are planned also. The GPU also is planning to work with the government on a bill, a media reform bill, isn't it? Before probably June or maybe September or something, or thereabout.
So currently we have a number of draft laws. Also we have a number of suggestions, like I said, that are suggested to the Gambia government for reforms. Part of the bills we have right now is the access to information law. We all know that the Gambia never had the luxury of access to information law, and this is the trend internationally, both in Africa and elsewhere. So, like I said, we realize we've been discussing with the government, look, we need to do this thing, and the government showed us the commitment, they showed us the goodwill that they are willing to do this thing. But along the line, what they did not say, but what we realize is the fact that maybe they are willing to do this thing, but maybe the expertise is not there. So together with working with our regional partner, that is the Media Foundation for West Africa, and also the National Endowment Fund, that is NET, we hired a constitutional expert, a constitutional law expert, to help the government to draft this access to information law. And the law basically, or our draft bill basically drew inspiration, because at the regional level we have the AU model law on access to information. At the international level also we have model laws, we have generic laws on access to information. Regionally also at the level of ECOWAS has some goodwill and some good pronouncement as far as access to information is concerned. So the work of the constitutional draft expert was to look at these particular laws at regional level, international level, and at sub-regional level to prepare a model law for the Gambia. This law has been prepared, or the draft bill has been prepared. The next phase, or in the next coming weeks and days, the Gambia Press Union will be involved in discussion and consultation, first among the industry players, that's among the media players, to see whether all the things that they want to see in an access to information law are in the bill. If that is done, we will now go beyond the media, because one thing, or usually that what people don't understand about access to information law is it is not just there for the journalists. In an access to information law regime, you don't need to be a journalist to write to any government ministry or to any public institution to say, I need what information A, B, and C. You don't need to be a journalist. So in our consultation also, we don't want to limit the discussion to journalists alone. We want the civil society, we want the people to take ownership of the law, right from the drafting stage, right from the initial stage.
So that even researchers would have interest.
So researchers can have interest into this thing. So that will be the second phase of the discussion. Then the final phase will now be our dialogue with the government to see this is what not only the media, but this is what the Gambians want to see in their access to information law. So it will now be like a give and take between the media, between the GPO, or between the stakeholders there and the government to say, oh no, but I think you guys are asking too much. We can give you this thing, but we cannot give this thing. For a start, we know we cannot have everything perfect from the word go, but we will go with what we think is reasonable to have for a start. And gradually, as time continues, gradually as the bill is being implemented, some of the shortcomings will be realized. Some of the misgivings that were there might have come now plain. So these things will be corrected as time goes on. So that discussion is there. We are also working on another bill called, in collaboration with Article 19, the Media Services Bill. The Media Services Bill has some level of regulation, but we all know that generally the trend in the world is self-regulation as far as the media is concerned. But we know the media also have some technical components. For example, when you come to the broadcast field, the issue of spectrum. This is not something that can be regulated by a self-regulatory body, because it is a government resources, it is a national resources. It has to be regulated by the government. So in this media agency, or in this media services bill, we are calling for the establishment of an independent regulatory body to oversee issues like spectrum distribution, spectrum monitoring, spectrum regulation, and licensing. These are issues that cannot be handled by a self-regulatory body. But these are issues we don't also trust it in the hands of the government. That is what currently obtains. For
What
example,
stage are we with our self-regulation?
Mind you, this does not obtain, it's not under the government, it's under the poor.
So in fact, that's where I was going to say
technically not government, just to clarify.
Yeah.
In fact,
it's technically not government. Government, PURA is government, isn't
I
it?
was going to say that. That's going to be the second phase of my statement. I see PURA, with all honesty, I see PURA to be an extension of the government. It is an act of parliament. We all realize that. It is supposed to be an autonomous body.
Yes.
But PURA is directly reporting to a Ministry of Information, which is a government establishment. So technically, you cannot delink PURA from the Ministry of Information. And
So
right now,
actually,
the powers of PURA, as well as issues of licensing are concerned, is they only have advisory powers. If I am interested in television operation, if I apply for a licensing, of course, PURA will be the one to receive the application. PURA will be the one to review the application. But they don't have the power to approve. So the approval power still lies not within PURA, but to a supervisory authority, to a government authority.
Justice Ministry.
Exactly, to Ministry of Information. So technically for me, because of this, because of the chain of operation in PURA, from the PURA board management to the Ministry of Information, I don't see PURA to be independent.
Absolutely.
Well, I think there is some sort of independence, to be honest, as far as poor is concerned. But at the same time, there are still issues. There's need for empowerment of poor, like on this case of licensing. So it should be beyond just recommendations. Right? They should be empowered to issue to make decisions as to who should and who should not get a license. I think some of the other issues, as far as poor is concerned, I don't speak of poor, but I think, based on my research, important thing is that there's so much, poor is sort of overwhelmed. Poor is regulating media, poor is regulating sewage, electricity, water, petroleum products and all that. So it's overwhelming. So, but
they don't seem to have expertise for all of those.
Exactly. So you need to think, is it easier to set up an independent regulatory body now that is charged with responsibility of managing media affairs, or is it better to empower Pura to do this? So these are issues that really should factor in sort of the discussion. That
I think the best practice internationally, there is nowhere in the world, developing, emerging, where you see all these utilities regulatory bodies are lumped together with media regulation. I stand to be corrected since we are a researcher, but I have not seen anywhere in the world wage regulation, electricity regulation, ICT regulation, petroleum regulation, all these things regulation lumped together with media regulation. I've not seen it anywhere. Yeah. So the recommendation now for me is not to empower Pura to be able to do this thing, but to take that part of Pura's mandate and give it to an independent body.
Then that you are asking for an increase in government's recurrent expenditure.
Maybe technically.
Because you are asking, there are a lot of implications for that.
Of course,
because in that case, you will be hiring more people for a standalone institution.
Yeah. But at the same time, what is important is that this is a conversation that should be had.
Yeah.
You know, so it's really important that we have this conversation and to look at the best way out. So, and also just because we don't have it anywhere else doesn't mean we cannot have it in Gambia. We're a separate country. We are a sovereign state, and we have different environmental conditions and so on.
Totally agree.
You know, so I mean, so yeah, I think that's important.
So as a practicing journalist, maybe before you say what, I could pick your mind on this, because I think we would have to fast forward, and we're running out of time. But I want to ask you of your view, because on the current indexes we have seen, I will come to Demba and Jahate, but the Reporters Without Borders have said that Gambia has jumped 30 places. In other words, we've improved 30 places on the rank of fresh freedom. In fact, we are the bright lights of Africa. We and Ethiopia. You feel that fact represented in, as far as the freedom you feel in your work is concerned?
Come again?
Like, do you feel that that figure is accurate based on the realities of your working environment?
Yeah, it should be. It is accurate to me, because look, considering the difference that happened during a period of 3 years, it's really huge. And then looking at the situation, how it was and how people are free now, it is really increasing. And let me just draw you back to then. There was no even school of journalism in the country then. And the fear that was in the minds of many, or when you even tell parents that I want to study journalism, the thing that they first tell you is, do you want to end up in mile 2? Because that was something that was in the minds of everyone, even me. Because I was forced to go into the science field, and I still pushed myself back to the journalism field, which has been my passion and my profession for.
Congratulations.
Yes, thank you, since I was young. So then looking at it, now you've seen a whole lot of people going into the journalism field. That alone tells you how things have changed. And that fact, to be honest, it's really accurate. And just maybe in a few years to come, you will see more people going into the journalism profession, not only learning it, but then again practicing it, and because of the freedom that it has now.
Demba?
I tend to disagree with Aissatou. I mean, I like her optimism. I think the fact of the matter is that yes, there have been significant improvements. The fact that we're even sitting here talking about this is an improvement on its own. But for me, the key factors, I mean, and this I mentioned earlier, the fact that the legal framework is almost the same since is fundamentally important. We need to change that. And in fact, if we were to sustain any sort of media freedom that we have attained, it must be enshrined. It must be in the laws. It must be in the books. Because otherwise, we're enjoying this because maybe we have President Barrow. What happens if we have another Jammeh type? I mean, whether or not we like it, there's a possibility of that, because we have elections in about 2-3 years or even in 1 year, depending on how you look at the situation. So there is going to be change, you understand? We're not going to have Jammeh Barrow forever, you understand? So in order for us to sort of maintain the momentum with which we came out of the dictatorship, there's need for the legislation to change. That's one important thing. The other important aspect of all of this is also the tendency to self-censor. I agree that people are a lot freer, a lot you know, open in terms of talking to the media, and journalists are a lot more free to practice. But there's still some sort of self-censorship in our journalists. There's still some sort of censorship within the media houses. You know, there's some sort of political alignment within the media houses. And those are all issues that directly affect media freedom, because we're talking about media freedom. We also need to include transparency of a decision in terms of news making and news production. How many media houses in this country are very transparent in terms of the way they cover news, the kind of news they cover, do they have editorial policies on what is news and what is not news, who can and who cannot be journalists in their respective media houses, and so on and so on. These are all fundamentally important. We go beyond that. We talk about the issue of media pluralism. A lot of media houses are just monolithic. You understand? In this country, we have more than 50% of the population are women. By the way, some of us are in this four-man panel, and we only have one woman. Yeah. Where are the other diverse voices? And like, why are we not including them? It's all important. All of these are critical in terms of measuring media freedom and media, development, and that's fundamentally important. And until we have those indicators, like boosting up in terms of what we're doing. Yes, we have come out of a dictatorship. I mean, certainly we don't see the arrests and the detention and the intimidation that obtain on the Jammeh. I mean, that's a huge relief on all of us. But there's still a long way to go.
Jara, you've talked about the bad, the good. I mean, the cooperation between you and the government, the GPU and the government. Let's talk about the bad. Because there were some attacks in 2018.
I was even going to say that.
In 2018. Let's talk about that. I mean, we've seen a change of ways from state-sanctioned attacks to attacks by political parties and individuals, but also the police.
Yes. So like this common saying that even though there might be changes, but all habits hardly die easily. We've seen a sustained harassment, if you like, against the journalists. Over the last 2 years, 2017, 2018, the Gambia Press Union has registered at least 7 physical violent attacks against the journalists. And this started way back in 2017. And the first one, like you said, we've seen the changes when it comes to how these attacks occur. All of them, or most of them initially were state sanctioned, like you said, but we have seen a shift in that. The first attack against a journalist was a journalist of Foroya then, was perpetrated not by the state, not even by the state security agencies, but by the political parties. But also, I find it difficult to link this from the state, the fact that these are coalition parties, because then the coalition was very strong. And all these three parties whose supporters violently attack a journalist were parties that were very strong in the government then. It was the UDP, the NRP, and I think the GMC at the joint press conference. So this for me cannot be said to be a state attack, but also cannot be taken out of the state because these are parties in power. The second one we've seen also was an attack against Pamodo, which is not very old. Pamodo Bojang of Brikama, I can't remember the name of the radio station. Yeah, but Pamodo was violently attacked. Home Digital FM, thank you so much. Pamodo was violently attacked. Not only attacked, after the attack, he was also taken into custody. He was detained for a few hours. I mean, from that we've seen the GRS crew also. The GRS crew was attacked, this time again, not by the state, but by the political parties, by the APRC. After that also, we've seen the attack by Manka of Africa. He was also Boubacar Manka. Boubacar was attacked by the state security agencies. And in all these cases, in all these 7 cases, the Gambia Press Union consistently make a report to the police head office in the person of the police senior command, either the IGP if he is in town, or if he is not there, the second in command and the senior command.
You even met the IGP.
We even met the IGP in the case of the GR3S. But in all these cases, not even a single perpetrator was brought to book. Not even a single perpetrator. So I said all habits never die, because we've seen a trend of impunity in the days of Jammeh, and we've seen the continuation of that impunity still in the days of Adam Barrow, because here are people violently attacked in the course of their professional job. The matter was reported to the police, but surprisingly, not even a single person and not even anything comes out of this thing.
So Perhaps that's the worry.
Yeah, I mean that's it. And also there's another important component to all of this, and that is the public assessment or public support for media freedom. This is fundamentally important. You look at the media index that we all clapping for ranking Gambia 30 points up compared to previous ratings. The same ranking will tell you that the public support for media freedom everywhere, including in the Gambia, has declined significantly. And in the case of the Gambia, you mentioned Afrobarometer earlier on. We had a survey on this. In the Gambia, less than 30% of the population, or about 30% of the population, and that's the only amount of people who support media freedom in this country. Over 60% think that the government should have the authority to directly control and determine what media houses can or cannot publish. So that would be a cause for concern.
And this is a continental-wide research survey.
So this is really should be a cause for concern for journalists, but also for
the
government,
GPU,
for
particularly
for the general public in itself. Why do we think that the government should have the right to control what journalists should do and what should not do in that publication?
So, yeah, I suppose this is important, but there is one key important thing I want us to talk about before we end in just about 10 minutes, and that's the capacity of media houses, the capacity of journalists. And this is also a very important thing as far as GPU is concerned. There are a lot of issues, violations of ethical practice. We have talked about how dictatorship affect even the recruitment of various otherwise bright talents who could have been in the media from coming in, and also how a lot of people have left, have been exiled, how resources in media organizations have depleted over time because of certain repressive laws and repressive policies of the government. I mean, how have these past policies of the government affect content issues?
In terms of capacity.
In terms of
capacity of the journalism.
Yes.
I think part of the effects, like it was alluded to earlier on, of the Jambi region was the fact that two things. Professional journalists, I mean people who were trained to professional level, to degree level, in journalism, were not practicing journalism at all. Some of them decided to utilize their skills in other fields other than journalism. And those who eventually come into the media, they did so by so much of censoring themselves, but even beyond censoring themselves, they also decided to dance to the tune of the government. So that seriously affected quality and content and even skills in the newsroom, because some of us came into the newsroom from directly this notion of classroom to newsroom thing. I graduated from school without any professional training in journalism. I joined the media. And the same thing is true, I think, for almost most of us here. We graduated from school because we have passion and because we think we can do the job. We joined into the field without any training. This is what some of the things that the Barrow government also inherited, but this is also a cause of concern for the Gambia Press Union. Because of that, most of the projects, if you look at the expenditure of the Gambia Press Union in the last 3 years, from 2016 to now, most of our expenditure goes to capacity building of journalists. At the Congress, when I was reading my report, I told people that more than 60% of our revenue, in the last 2 years, all went to capacity building of journalists. And thank God, as far as we are concerned, it is yielding results, because most of our journalists don't have the wherewithal to go to the University of the Gambia. I mean, most of our practicing journalists also, they don't have all the wherewithal in terms of finances to go to the Media Academy for Journalism and Communication. Most of them decided to improve themselves, or most of them are gradually improving on the job thanks to the training of the Gambia Press Union. So this is what the GPU has been doing. And when it comes to the ethical violation, in 2016, we reviewed and revised the Code of Conduct for Gambian journalists. And at the time, we said every 2 years, this particular ethical code should be reviewed so we can bring it in line with the current realities. We know that the media is one of the most dynamic fields. Every day, everything, technology is changing, the way people practice is changing, and the code needs to be a living document. So in the next 2 weeks, the code will also review, because it would have been 2 years since the code was reviewed and enacted. So in the next week or two, the code will be reviewed by a technical committee and it will be validated by a bigger body. All this is to make sure that not only people are capacitated with core journalism skills, but they also know the ethical dimension. Because for us, there is no point in having all the skills, all the professional training in journalism when you don't know the ethics or when you are not respecting the journalism ethics. So we think that both of them should go hand in hand. In as much as we are giving professional training, we should also give some ethical sensitization to our journalists. And we have been doing just that over the years.
Interesting.
Capacity, I'll ask you to go first, though.
Okay, don't worry, you can carry on.
So I'm very passionate about capacity,
Yes.
and that's probably very much because the level of capacity will determine.
And that's
the level
because
of
you are a journalism trainer at the Media Academy.
Yeah, so I mean, I think one of the issues that we should really pay attention to as far as capacity building is concerned is also about bringing standards in terms of capacity building.
Yeah.
It's one thing to spend a lot of money on capacity, and it's another thing altogether to make sure that it yields dividend. There are a lot of schools of journalism in the country. There are a lot of mass communication centers in this country. You know, why is it that we can still push out the required number of journalists in this country? Why is it that we still have issues, you know, basic ethical mishaps every day on all the media houses almost, right? Whether it's print, electronic, online, you know, and so on and so on, radio and TV, people make mistakes, basic mistakes in journalism. So there is a need for us to sort of standardize as far as capacity building is concerned, and that's where, you know, key institutions such as the University of the Gambia School of Journalism come into play. The National Accreditation and Quality Assurance Authority, NACA, also has a role to play in this. The Ministry of Higher Education has a role to play in this, and all of them are very, very important stakeholders if we are to move ahead in terms of, you know, making this industry very, very viable and to play its role in national development. It's fundamentally important.
Okay, what he said is actually quite true, because not attending a school or doing communication or mass communication actually makes you a journalist. Or you cannot just go, yes, I've been in a journalism class or so, I can just be a journalist. To me, that doesn't tell well. It's not every and anyone that can become a journalist. If you're doing the journalism profession, it is something that you should be so passionate about. And when you are doing it, you have to know what you are doing. It has principles and things that that guides the journalism profession. So before you actually do what is expected, you have to go by everything that it takes when it comes to the ethical aspects of becoming a journalist. Because you cannot just go to a program and then just start reporting everything. No. Are you doing it in the way that it is expected to be done? Are you comporting yourself as the way as journalists should be comported or so? So most of these things should all be put into consideration as far as the journalism profession, to me, I believe, is concerned.
Interesting, but then again, investigative journalism,
Yeah.
I mean, this is another level of it all. If we are struggling with the basics, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, that's why investigative journalism is very much lacking. Lami has a paper on this, and I want him to talk about that just a bit. But quickly, I'll just say that there's an onus on media publishers or media owners to hire trained people, because we do have trained people who are not hired. You understand? So media chiefs are guilty of the fact that they rather go for cheap labor of untrained people that they can use as interns for cheap labor, sometimes for just transport phone or whatever. You know, I think that practice should also sort of be reviewed. I mean, the Gambian media chiefs should look into the fact that they should hire people who have at least some sort of training. You know, it might not be the best training, but at least they have some sort of training. You know, and that's fundamentally important.
Yeah. So about investigative journalism, I think. I mean, perhaps it's almost inexistent because of the capacity challenges we face in the media, but also the resource issues. I mean, why are we where we are?
So the problem is a bit complex. Part of it is what you said, resources, but part of it is what Demba also said. If we are a media that is struggling to get the basics, and investigative journalism is that higher level of journalism, if you are not able to get the basics right, how do we even get to move forward? When I was writing my university project, I solely decided to concentrate my research project on investigative journalism, but I was only looking at the print media. In the process, I was also looking at just for 2 years, from 2016 December to I think June of 2018. I was looking at this period. But within the period that my research concentrated on, and within the newspapers that I was looking at, I was able to go through at least 1,000 stories, 1,000 stories. Out of this 1,000 stories reviewed, I can safely tell you, not even 2 articles met the criteria to be called investigative.
So 1,000 stories.
Out of 1,000 stories, that
2 years.
not even 2 articles met the criteria to be called investigative.
That's bad.
It's not only bad, it's terrible. In terms of percentage, that is less than 0.001. So this is terrible. It's not something to be laughed about. Because we cannot be a media, and this is the time when we all say that this is the democracy, is freedom for the media and for everyone. But this is a time that our journalists and our media struggle to even produce a single investigative article. We are not even talking about the days of Jammeh, when, investigative journalism concept in itself was even unheard of. It was unthinkable of. But this is a time we say there is democracy, there is freedom. The journalists are allowed to go there, to go do their job. But because of capacity, to come back to the capacity challenge, because the capacity is not there, our journalists are not able to do so. But also because of resources are not there, our journalists are not able to do so. Because investigative journalism also, to be fair to our reporters, it's not only about skills. It is much more complex than skills. Investigative journalism takes time. Investigative journalism takes resources. Investigative journalism also, you need to have the enable environment. We initially discussed about the issue of laws. Exactly. The laws in this country are not friendly for investigative journalism. No. We come back to the issue of resources. One story, an investigative story, could take you up to even six months, even more. An investigative story can take you a whole 1 year. Imagine any Gambian journalist working for a media house on a full-time basis, saying that I'm going to concentrate my whole 1 year pursuing just one story. The media house will not even allow you. And because it is going to take a lot of time, they will be paying you salaries, when in this process you will not be bringing anything. On the part of the journalists themselves, because it takes a lot of time, they get fatigue on the process. They will be like, but why do I need to pursue one story for 3 months? Much more 6 months or even 1 year. So because of that, our journalists also decided to go for simple workshop stories. But beyond that, also on the issue of regulation, investigative journalism thrives on people giving you information. But we are operating in a country where there are a lot of official secrets. The government, the civil servants are not allowed by law to divulge certain information. And there is no law to protect whistleblowers. And these are the things that investigative journalism thrives on. You need to have a law that protects whistleblowers, but also you need to do away with Secrecy Act, Official Secrecy Act. So civil servants can be comfortable to give you information. So whistleblowers also can be comfortable to give you certain information. So the regulatory environment is not there in the Gambia. The capacity is not there. The resources are not there in the media houses. All these problems put together, I think this is why we are not seeing investigative journalism level in the Gambia as it should be. But also, maybe I don't need to say that it's good news, because I said capacity is not the only thing.
Yeah, you're about to do a training.
Capacity, exactly.
But you've had a 2 months training before,
yes.
And you're about to do another one.
Yes. So I also did sort of a post-training survey from most of the participants. And to come back to the challenge, most of what they've been telling me is, in as much as they are capacitized, but their media houses are not supporting them. Because they don't have the resources. How much are they paid for them to pull their money, for them to put their money in their pocket to pull out and finance themselves? But the media houses also, maybe because they are not interested in investigative articles, but also I think part of the problem is because in doing investigative journalism, you need to, hurt some people by default. Some head needs to be rolled, some institutions need to be reformed, some system needs to be reformed. And these are the same system, or these are the same people or institutions that are also supporting our media houses in terms of advert and some other things. So the kit is a bit complex. It's not just about capacity. Corporate censorship, I can tell you, is part of the biggest challenge that the government media is grappling with. It's not only about...
By that you mean you censor yourself because the organization in question, organization in this story...
For example, if Kerr is advertising on my media, Kerr is advertising on my media, I cannot say anything that hurts Kerr. Because Kerr is going to withdraw their advert, and mind you, I'm surviving.
You will hurt your own pocket.
You don't buy the hand that feeds you.
Yes. No one buys the hand that feeds you. Well, so they say.
Exactly.
So I think that's it for today. Thank you, guys and lady, for being with us for today. We're going to hold discussions of this nature in the Ramadan as days pass by, to help people pass some time and also discuss some very critical issues. But for today, that's it. Thank you very much for being there.
Dreaming of owning a property in a prime location with great proximity and fantastic neighborhood? EJ Investments Sanyang Seaview Estate is the best choice you have been waiting for. Our Sanyang Seaview Estate is approximately 15 minutes drive away from the busy hub of Brusubi roundabout and into the heart of nature, where you can have a peaceful and relaxed lifestyle with your family. You can buy a finished 4-bedroom story with 5-year flexible payment plan, or a service plot with 2-year payment plan option. With over 300 homes, you will enjoy big tar roads with covered drainage, modern electrification with solar street lights, gated entrance with security post, and a breath-catching experience of our beautiful sea view and lake view. You can own a home today at our Sanyang Seaview Estate. Call us today on 446-4838 or 325-9220. Visit our website on ejinvestments.net. EJ Investments, first in property.